subjects. Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. Well, it's going to be 2028 before I stop doing that. Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. I have no idea where my co-hosts are, but I assume they'll be along, especially now that they've gotten the notification that we've gone live, but they're late. 17 minutes late. Can't wait around anymore, Harry. Rhinehold, where you at? Somebody tag them. Make sure that they're okay. Everybody go on their social media, go on their Facebook, go in the Discord, and just ask, hey, where are you? Okay, well, Robert, bye.
Warning. This show is for adults by semi-adults, so the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. If you struggle to understand politics, we explain it from an independent, libertarian point of view. With all of the irreverence it deserves, we toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, Chris Spangle, a 15-year veteran of politics and media.
Welcome to the show. My name is Chris Spangle. Thanks for being here. You can check me out, if you don't know anything about me, at chris-spangle.com. Before we start, I want to thank all of the members of the Wall Plus membership program. It's our Patreon. It's what we call it. WAL for We Are Libertarians. Go to joinwalplus.com. You can get all kinds of great benefits. We have extra shows scheduled out till March. And you can get all those right now. You can get them ad-free. You can get the back catalog. There's almost 1,070 episodes of the We Are Libertarians, the old shows from the old network, and then all the different shows that I've done. You can go check that out now at joinwalplus.com. And I want to thank our $100 a month members, John Pusilo, Casey Feldposh, Lars Nordskog, Jake Edel, Matthew Durbin, Rhinehold, Christy Avery, and Jason Doolittle. And I want to especially thank Jeff Bennett, who you heard if you were listening to one of the previous shows, where I talked to Jeff, who is a business owner, a small business owner of an ice cream store, Ampersand Ice Cream, out in Fresno, California. And he talked about the hardship of owning a business in California at this time. And it is getting a lot harder out there. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but he was telling me that there are a lot of code violations. So they opened up the state like 2 days before that was set to air. Newsom has like horrible marks for his handling of the lockdowns, rightly so. And he said in Fresno there are recall Newsom yard signs everywhere in Fresno. But they waited until about a week after they opened up, and they started going around to all the different businesses and giving them code violations, revoking business licenses permanently. It never ceases to amaze how poorly California treats its businesses and drives jobs other places. So, but Jeff was so nice to send me some Ampersand ice cream. I sampled all the flavors last night. And it was really, really good. So if you're in the California area, you're near Fresno, make sure you go check out Ampersand Ice Cream. Today I'm going to talk about minimum wage. But first I want to read a letter from one of our patrons. And they write, "Thank you so much for everything you do. I just found the site and I love it. I consider myself a libertarian, and I have for about 3 years now. I'm also a devout Orthodox Lutheran. I also run into arguments I cannot be a conservative Christian and be a libertarian. But I disagree. I do not agree with gay marriage on a moral level, but on a constitutional level, I don't see any argument against it. The same goes with legalizing marijuana. I do disagree with abortion on all levels, but that's a discussion for a different time. Just wanted to say thank you and keep up the good work." So another nice note from folks. Make sure you go to Join Wall Plus to support the network. Like I said, today we are going to talk about minimum wage, take just a little bit of a look at Joe Biden's plans, but really get into why minimum wage is harmful for jobs. And I will remind you now, and I remind you later, that jobs are people's hopes, dreams, rent, food, education for their children. It's not just about being greedy and wanting money. It's about making sure that people have enough money to achieve what they want to achieve. Now, let's accept a public apology from both Rhinehold and Harry Price. You're both late. Where the hell have you been? Well, I can't hear you, Harry. See, if you had been here early, we could have tested this out. We could hear you. Actually, that was my fault. Never mind. Harry, explain yourself. Where the hell have you been?
Let's put blame where real blame is always due, because originally the show, we were supposed to always go live at 8 a.m., but Spangle could never really make it there at 8 a.m. So, I got out of my routine of working out early in the morning to do the show then, and then we would delay till like 10 o'clock and then start by 10:30. So now we've been doing consistently at 10 o'clock. And then he posted it's being made by 10:15. That's okay. I've got a little kid in the house who doesn't go by your set schedules, but that's okay. If you must be, and if you want to know where I was, it's because my little sweet, gorgeous of a daughter, somehow as small as she is, can clog a toilet. I don't understand it. I don't get it, but she can.
I do not accept your public apology. I feel that it was very weak. I set the stream for 10:15, but we always meet at 10 o'clock. And Rhinehold, I don't know that we've ever done the show at 8 a.m. What is he talking about?
I think it was 9, but the problem I had was that my camera decided this morning at 8 o'clock when I was getting ready to quit working.
You know what? I can't wait till they make co-host robots, and then I can replace the two of you. I
tried my backup camera. It didn't work. I figured I'd just come on without a camera. Then about two minutes before we were to 10:15, so about 10:13, it came on. It started working.
That's okay. Well, yeah, Harry, I have a little one running around my house, and we just hit the age where everything is a tableau for art.
Yep.
Including the front of my Mac, which now has a nice decorative design of swirlies, murals on the walls. Mm-hmm. They're really destructive. It's like toddlers do not respect my back seat.
Yeah, at all. Like, I have just given up on that back seat of my car.
Right.
Just like, nope, that's just going to get destroyed.
Whatever that crumb-crusted concrete funk is in the back right corner of the car is just staying there, and it's not coming out because no matter how hard I try to keep my investment nice, it always fails.
First off, cars are not investments. Cars depreciate way too fast to be investments unless they are a collector car.
Okay, Mr. Dogecoin.
Hey, diamond hands over here. I'm holding on to my Doge because I can't find my wallet, but diamond hands.
you never found it?
No, I still can't find it. I have no idea where it's at. I think there might be a backup of that hard drive at my mom's house. And I'm this close to driving down to Bloomington to go check.
Oh, you should. You've got like 3 days left before it's back to like 0.0005 cents.
Now, what if it goes to the moon? Okay, because what if it goes to the moon?
No. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's not going to the moon.
All right. You're smarter than that. Come on. You're smart enough to have 2 houses. You know you should sell that Dogecoin.
Oh yeah. As soon as, yeah.
You've got to put it all in Garlic Coin. Garlic Coin is where you must invest.
Yeah. Full disclosure, my mom is actually driving up here from Bloomington right now, so I'm going to crash the freaking market myself.
Did she find it?
I don't know. She's just bringing my backup drive up, so I'm selling. If it's there, I'm selling. I'm sorry.
I hope it is. You'll have to keep us updated and let us know next week.
Next week he won't show up because he'll have made so much money. He's just done with it. He's retired. He's going to be in Hawaii.
Yeah, not that. No. I've got enough to pay off one mortgage, so.
No, well, he has to be here next week because it may be the Saturday that we celebrate Black History Month. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, we only get one Saturday, so we get the shortest month and one Saturday on the wall.
Well, at least it's not the shortest Saturday.
Yeah, but I'm concentrating it, so I'm inviting Dion Curry on from the Pat Down.
Oh, nice.
And nice. we're gonna just really, it's gonna be fun. All right, so let's get started with the show. Let's talk a little bit about the minimum wage and Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion proposal aimed at the economic recovery. These are great notes, again, by Sam Schultz, our lead researcher here at the We Are Libertarians Network. Put together great notes 3 weeks ago. We've just been getting delayed getting to it. But, we want to talk about the minimum wage today because I think there's a lot of – it feels right that you would just demand that businesses increase the minimum wage so people can have a livable wage. People should, if they work, get paid for their money, right? What problem could you possibly have with the government mandating that a business pay somebody a livable wage? So we're going to explain why it doesn't work. And it's not because we're evil, heartless, cold bastards. It's just because anytime the government tries to do anything, they're bad at it. But the reason this is on the table is because of Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion proposal that he's put forth. And when this came out, a lot of things get put into these bills in the proposal because they're meant to be taken out. The minimum wage, $15 an hour raise, is one of those things, in my view, that was never really going to pass and was never really on the table. It was, it's like Donald Trump always did this. It's in the art of the deal. You go further than you want to go so you can pull it back to where it needs to be. If you want a salary of $100,000, you say, I want $150,000 and then negotiate back to 100, right? That's what I hope to do one day. But in this proposal, let's just take a little bit of a look at the rescue plan that he has put together. So billed as the American Rescue Plan, the package augments many of the measures in Congress's $3.3 trillion corona relief bill from March and in the $900 billion legislation from December. The plan calls for spending another $1,400 per person to eligible receipts. Now, you'll notice that this show will not be covering any alphabet Congress people. I don't care. I don't want to talk about them. I think that a lot of people are just being cretinous towards AOC, Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTD, or whatever we're calling her. You just got to be a better person if you're going to have the power if you're going to sit on the top of the monopoly of violence, right? But all that aside, we're getting distracted with that stuff. One of those distractions is whether or not Joe Biden is fulfilling his promise of $2,000. So December you get $600, and then he's proposing $1,400 per person, and they're putting out graphics saying, "See, we fulfilled that promise," because that's what all the executive orders are about. He's just trying to look like he's fulfilling promise after promise, so he can what every president does. Oh, in my first 100 days, I was just like FDR and was a fundamental transformer. Even though, as you heard last week, most of these executive orders don't do anything. And so the Republicans and the Democrats are arguing over, and it's not even really the Republicans. It's really far left versus left. No, we want $2,000. Well, no, you can have $1,400. Well, that's not fulfilling your campaign promise. I want $2,000. No, it's $2,000 because $1,400 plus $6. It's the craziest Twitter argument that doesn't matter to people, but it's the whole journalist infrastructure just gets sucked into this debate of whether or not it's $1,400 or $2,000 or what. It's just every time I turn on, because I've been taking Harry's suggestion a lot, and I've deleted the apps from my phone. I look at Facebook and Twitter maybe a couple times after my work duties are done in the morning. And I just turn it on, Harry, and I'm just this is dumb. Why? Who cares? Shut up.
Isn't it great without all the beeps, the boops, the colorful lighting? It's this is just tricking me to come here.
Yeah. We're arguing over whether or not you need another $600, which, spoiler alert, most people don't need another $600. They don't really need the $1,400. Some do. Most don't. So that's an update on a meaningless controversy. Biden would also increase the federal unemployment aid to $400 a week, up from the $300 weekly enhancement contained in Congress's relief package from December. This plan would also provide $25 billion in rental assistance for low and moderate income households who have lost jobs during the pandemic. That's in addition to the $25 billion approved in December. Another $5 billion would be set aside to help renters pay their utility bills. The plan would extend the federal eviction moratorium set to expire at the end of January to September 30th, as well as allow people with federally guaranteed mortgages to apply for forbearance until September 30th. Again, mandating that property owners don't have to collect income on their investment from renters is just kicking the can down the road. You're creating an artificial bubble. You are not helping people. You are going to have a much worse housing crisis than 2008 if we do this for 2 years and you can't evict people because of non-payment for rent. People are going to take advantage of it, and you're going to end up with it's trying to make a fix in this crisis that will create another crisis that will mean another fix for another crisis, and it's a never-ending moral hazard. So, well, go ahead, Harry.
It's also like driving inventories low on houses. And then because there's people like myself who have houses that or rental properties that want to put things up for rent, but won't, because if I can't evict someone, I'd rather have that house sit there. It's a perfectly good house. Anyone can live in it. I'm not going to charge that much for it. But if I can't evict someone, I'm not letting it. I'd rather it just sit there and just be a storage unit. Right.
So housing availability goes down, which means the price goes up because the demand increases, the supply goes down, price goes up. So it's not a fix. Evan says the new announcement is that the $1,400 will start phasing out if you make over $50,000 a year. So the people who are paying the tax aren't going to get the stimulus. So I still have not gotten my stimulus. I apparently am going to get a $600 rebate. So this is funny. Jeremiah, the boss hog of Liberty, tagged his congressman, Greg Pence, Mike's brother, and some smart staffer named Liz saw that I was a member of the media and reached out and said, "Hey, I'll help you get your stimulus." And so they're talking to the IRS, which may trigger an audit, and it may be stupid, but they're looking into it. So I should find something out soon.
You want to stay off the radar,
right? Is that what you did? You painted your fingernails with your stimulus?
Yeah, I went to the salon, got my feet and my hands done, and I bought this beanie. Got my stimmy.
Nice. The plan also calls on Congress to create $25 billion emergency fund and add $15 billion to an existing grant program to help child care providers. Biden is also calling on Congress to subsidize through September the premiums of those who lost their work-based health insurance. So we'll subsidize health insurance through September, and that'll, of course, be extended. You remember when unemployment after 9/11 was extended for like 3 years? They just kept extending the unemployment insurance.
I remember when they dropped the prime lending rate down to 0, and it's been there ever since, and it's caused all kinds of problems that we're dealing with now.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's the same thing over and over. It's caused most of the problems we're having now anyway, because if people have been able to save money over the past decade, we wouldn't have had this issue where they couldn't go to work for a couple months. They would have had money to fall back on. It wouldn't have been such a devastating thing. But nobody saves money anymore because there's no incentive to anymore, because you can't get more than 1% on a savings account. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Oof. Anyone else feel that was going to be Rhinehold had to hold himself back from a rant there? He was going to go on for 30 minutes.
I could have gone for more than 30 minutes.
It allowed me to find the information I needed, so I was okay with it. So Jen asks, forgive me, but isn't homelessness also bad for the economy? What's the fix? We are probably the only libertarian podcast that has ever had episodes on homelessness. I invite you to go to the Chris Spangle Show feed, Google, search for homelessness. We've got a couple episodes on it. So here's people will always adjust. So if you're looking for a public solution to the problem, the point is that you always there's unintended consequences. It's all about trade-offs. So it's if you intervene in this way now, the trade-off is that you're going to create a bubble that can and probably will make the problem worse. We saw that with cash for clunkers. And they were trying to retire in the last crisis. They were trying to retire cars, give people money so they could buy a newer car, and that artificially drove up the price of used cars. and made it unaffordable for people to buy a decent used car, including myself at the time, who was very, very, very poor. And, so I ended up in a loan, which then I still haven't totally paid off that loan because you roll it into another car, right? So you just keep paying, you get into a cycle of debt. So the problem, whereas before cash for clunkers, you could pay cash for a car, you then had to take out a loan to get cash for clunkers. So if someone is, it's not automatic that people will end up homeless. A lot of people will move in with family as they already have. I mean, a lot of people are not participating in just, screw you, landlord, I'm not going to do this. They move in with family. They move out of the place so it doesn't go on the record. But by any estimate, there's about 9 million people affected that are kind of participating in this rollover. Harry, what were you going to say?
But the Cash for Clunkers program also drove up the price of fixing used cars because a lot of those parts were also crushed and had to be stripped down to their base components. So even if you have a used car, they drove the price of fixing those used cars up.
Right.
It's a reason why, I tell people, hey, don't buy that car because there's not that many of those, so you're not going to find the parts for it.
Yeah. Intervening in the market creates it's like we said, it makes rent more expensive because it lowers the availability of the supply.
And the other question, too, is we've been trying to fight homelessness as a public issue for how many decades? It's not gotten that much better, has it? I mean...
in some ways, the what's going on in the episode that we just posted yesterday, actually, about homelessness, it's a look at how a city of Indianapolis, the 12th largest city with about 2,500 homeless people experiencing homeless at this time in Indianapolis, how the city deals with that in a private way. So the thing about Indianapolis is that they have one public organization, which is the person that I talked to, but they're simply like a clearinghouse of information that coordinates amongst all these different private organizations that care for the homeless population in Indianapolis. And that's how the city deals with it, through private means. And it works fairly effective, but there are still a lot of problems. They just got a grant from HUD that's going to go to many of these private organizations that are going to solve more of the problems that, like we have one mission that is basically religious based. That's the biggest mission. And so people don't want to go there because they don't want to deal with the religiosity of it. And so there's, people who are funding it's like any other market, right? The private institutions adapt and change and grow and change. So, but search back, we talk a little bit about homelessness, and it's a very complicated problem to solve. Biden's plan calls for providing $15 billion to create a new grant program for small business owners, separate from the existing Paycheck Protection Program. It also proposes a $35 billion investment in some state, local, tribal, and non-profit financing programs that make low-interest loans and provide venture capital to entrepreneurs. Biden wants to send $350 billion to state, local, and territorial governments to keep their frontline workers employed, distribute the vaccine, increase testing, and reopen schools. The plan would provide an additional $170 billion to K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. The plan would give $20 billion to public transit agencies. Biden is also calling on Congress to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and to end the tipped minimum wage and sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities. Like homelessness, where with artificially intervening in the rent issue, you end up potentially creating more homeless down the line because of the price increases of rent. Minimum wage is one of those interventions that end up costing more jobs for the low-income worker than if you just had never intervened at all. So let's talk about Joe Biden's plan. I mean, I'm against it. How about you?
Brian, you want to say something?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. It's goofy because it barely does anything. Even if it's more show, it's a lot of show, pop, and fire in the pan, just like most of the executive orders were. It's like, well, we're going to do this for fellow employees and stuff like this, and then you just look at it and go like, How many federal employees are actually making this low amount that aren't interns or part time, or like, or just,
food service,
right? Yeah, right. Or in like some segment of a category that is doing this, because it's strange when you walk that, because like, and I'm gonna put it like, in this time, we all know like the government agencies that most of these people make buku, but no, I can't say buku bucks, but most people in a professional setting over the age of 18 and has a real time job are probably going to try to make around $15 an hour working for the government. If not, you get moved up, or it's just something that you do for your first 90 days. It's just what most government jobs are.
The other problem with a lot of this is that a lot of this money never gets spent. So if you look back at the bailouts of 2008 and the TARP program, Cash for Clunkers, a lot of this money will be allocated for these things, whatever gets passed, and then it will never actually be used. So like TARP for the banks was like $800 billion, and they only use like $500 billion, and that all got paid back by the banks. But we've really created a moral hazard with the intervention at that time, because, the feds, as we talked about with Douglas last week, the whole point of the Fed and their mission is to create stability. So whatever we need to do, whatever money we need to spend at the federal level to keep everybody kind of stable, because they want to just kind of print money and make sure nobody defaults, because if that happens, you start getting into deflation and inflation, and so stability is the name of the game, right? And a lot of this money will just not be accessed. It will be accessed with fraud. It will be, there's so many different problems with it. Now, the Republicans have come up with their own plan, and it is a lot smaller. I believe it was $600 billion versus the 1.9 trillion. And this is a graphic from the Washington Post. And let me make this bigger. So instead of the direct payments of $1,400, the GOP wants to severely limit that, about half, $465 to $220. Biden wants to give $350 billion to state and local governments. The Republicans want to give them $0. State and local governments have been hit the hardest in this. So for all your conspiratorial friends who think that state and local governments love the lockdowns, now Newsom and Cuomo will accept them, and some of these blue state governors seem like they are really loving the lockdown and the power that they have. But when I talk to people here in Indiana, they're like, "No, we lost $1 billion over 2 months last year in local revenue taxes, both income taxes, sales taxes, food and beverage taxes." And so state and local employees were actually the most laid off segment of all workers in 2020, because they lost so much revenue that they were, a lot of projects got canceled. So, I mean, maybe we should have more pandemics. But so you have, so that's why the Republicans don't want to bail them out and give them anything, is because they don't want, it's sort of a way to undercut. But the trade-off there is that by weakening state and local governments, you are empowering the federal government, and so you are increasing centralization. So the Republicans are kind of indirectly with not bailing them out by like trying to directly keep them from being funded. You make them more dependent on federal money, because they're going to get federal money, right? It's going to they're going to become more and more dependent. You'll hear next week our conversation about the breaking of the structure and the need for nullification and empowerment of state and local governments in our conversation with Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center. So unemployment insurance, the Democrats want $350 billion, the Republicans want $132. Schools reopening, $170 billion from Biden, $20 billion from the Republicans. Direct pandemic response, which is like PPE and other issues, both are at parity at $160 billion. Child tax credit, $120 billion for Biden, $0 for the Republicans. And man, you'd think that the Republicans would be all for a tax credit, but they're not. Small businesses equal at $50 billion. Child care, $40 billion. $20 billion for the Republicans. This money is meant to help low-income workers in lockdown states where schools are closed in the fall time. Rental assistance, $0 from the Republicans, $35 billion from the Democrats. So that's just a comparison of the plans. Susan Collins is leading the charge there. 10 Republican senators met with Joe Biden early last week to discuss their changes. Joe Manchin is the deal maker. He is the one that is deciding what is or is not going to be used. Thoughts on any of that, fellas?
I am also shocked at the child tax credit one from the Republicans. That's still a shocker. It's like, wow, I figured you guys be up for it, but apparently not.
Yeah.
And I think the school reopening one, I think it's just more to push to try to push them well, just open your schools. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. Just open the dang schools.
Yeah, we have
because I think it's just almost like saying the quiet, keeping the quiet part quiet. It's like most public schools are just, government funded daycare anyway. So they're just kind of like,
well, that's a little bit of an over exaggeration, but so we have an episode coming out Wednesday, I believe, on why schools should reopen. I was a very sloppy interviewer, but the gist of it is basically that, like, the spread in schools is very, very, very minimal, especially now with teachers boss hogging their way to the front of the vaccine line. There's the majority of the misery caused by lockdowns and the pandemic is coming from schools being closed. Schools have become the welfare distribution center. It's where kids ask for help when they're in abusive situations. Child abuse is skyrocketing, and the only reason we know that is because there are more dead children showing up at the hospital. And those would have been prevented if they had a teacher or a counselor that was keeping a watchful eye on them that could intervene and have conversations with the parents. So, schools being closed is causing, and women are dropping out of the workforce en masse because somebody has to stay home and take care of the kids. It puts extra financial pressure on the families. It makes the need for a $1.9 billion proposal being more readily available. And you weigh all of the societal costs of keeping schools closed compared with the risk of community spread and COVID, and it's a no-brainer for people who are just being honest. Schools need to be reopened.
So here's what I find interesting about all that. Aren't the Republicans and the conservatives the ones that have been pushing for homeschooling and stopping the public school system and teaching their kids at home?
Yeah, but that's the whole thrust of the episode that I do with Satya Morar, is that they're learning pods and homeschooling, and people are looking at this going, they're watching the teaching that the kids are getting. And they're going, all right, let's homeschool. Let's do something different. We're all working online. Let's go work from Hawaii while our kids do school online. Homeschooling and different means of schooling and school choice are being expanded because of all of this. And I've said on this program for years, Rhinehold, Harry's probably heard me say it. The internet has broken apart everything except education and government. And the pandemic is breaking apart education and government and is starting to work towards decentralizing that. So, people are realizing that they can do it on their own. They don't need the state to do it for them.
Then why are they so intense on getting the schools back open again? Why are the Republicans and the conservatives so
because people are dying. I mean, you're making kind of the collapsitarian argument. I'm all for school choice, but
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I don't understand why the Republicans aren't for this. Why they're so intent on getting the schools open again when they're the ones who keep saying that they should be closed and people should be homeschooling.
Right, because people are suffering, and you have to have a transitionary period. Like, this is one of the you have to have a period of time where you transition from government schools to full school choice, no state schools whatsoever. Because if you just cut it off and go fend for yourself, everybody, like you have mass societal chaos like we've had in a lot of low-income homes across the country.
Correct. Yeah, showing the idea of like, when I'm in office, I'm going to destroy I'm going to close all public schools. This is kind of what happens. You just can't do it. You need to phase it out.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that if that's the case, then why aren't they pushing for that? Why are they, since the whole thing started in May or whatever, they were like, we have to keep schools open. We have to get schools back open. We have to get them open now. We have to get them open. And it's been like a big focus for, Trump and the Republicans all of last year.
Well, part of it's driven, because, for Trump's part of it was he felt that it would look good to his base. I mean, right. But some of our more conservative-leaning friends here, John weighs in saying, I think they're wanting them back because the kids need social activity. The isolation and staring at screens has been a problem. I've seen that in my own family with school-age kids. It's very difficult.
There's also a problem with having kids learning social interactions with other kids instead of around adults, right? Mm-hmm. That's always been my problem with schools, is that you throw these kids together and they're trying to figure out how to interact with each other socially. Whereas a homeschooling type of situation, you could still have the kids interacting with other people, but you have them interacting more with adults than they do with kids. They learn adult ways of dealing with issues and how people interact instead of kids trying to figure it out on a playground.
No, I think that, and you're making the argument for homeschooling in general, and I totally agree with you. I'm on board with you 100%. I just look at this and I go, you cannot completely radically change the way that things are done and not have serious consequences, because as Darla says, not everyone can do homeschooling. And so that's why educational savings accounts are being, Georgia and Florida just started them. Indiana has a version of it. And so the money follows the student. You've heard that a lot, right? So your tax dollars follow the student so they can choose how and where they go to school, as opposed to, you just paying taxes on a school plus for private schooling or homeschooling.
Correct. Yeah. I think that's another thing that's also showing like the fissure of the system is that kids learn differently. You have to allow them to get moved around. I think a lot of parents, especially of young boys, are noticing that they can't just sit there and learn for like 8 hours a day sitting in their chair. If you let that kid get up, run in your backyard, come back in, he'll sit there and study for like a couple of minutes for an hour, then let him run back outside, play, like do a sport, come back in and study all day and be a blast. And they're wondering like, oh, that's why this one kid can't, do good at school, because they can't be active.
People have
that's the other thing too, is that kids really have different ways of learning. And I keep hearing stories from people saying kids need to be in a school because of blah, 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 blah. I would have done much better, not only in school, but in life, if I had not had to go to a school, if I had learned everything online. I think that way. That's the way my brain works. That's what stimulates me. I would have gone a lot farther, and I can prove that through other training that I did after school and working with computers and everything, right? So there are kids like that don't interact well with other kids at school. There's bullies, there's all kinds of issues in a school environment. So some kids do fine. Some kids need it. Some kids would be better off if they were doing home learning. I think what we come out of this with are more options.
Yeah.
Where they can still do remote learning for kids who want to do that or do better doing that. And the kids who want to be in the school can go and do the school too. But give the option for both. Don't make it a one-size-fit-all cookie cutter, because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like just like everything that we're talking about, when you do a cookie cutter approach to individualized problems, you never get good results other than the median, if you're lucky. And that's what government tries to do all the time.
Kathleen says the way we approach special education is the way we should approach all education, individually student-centered. Ron says some kids only get one good meal a day at school. And Ron's right. And I totally, we're not having an argument because we're all in agreement, I think. The reality is that you spent 100 years building this system and making people dependent on a system. You can't just rapidly change it and not expect horrifying consequences. And all these charities that I talk to on Now Hear This that are dealing with students have shifted to hunger relief because the impact on low-income families has just been astronomical. So it's, you know, homeschooling is the chains need to be taken off of homeschooling in all states, and you get, you know, I'm dating a homeschooler, comes from a great family. They're all super smart, well-educated, well-socialized. You know, only Jeremiah, the boss hog of Liberty, has some issues. He was homeschooled. So, you know, we don't want him to be your example of what happens to a kid when they're homeschooled. Kids can turn out totally normal, unlike Jeremiah, who just, you know, I don't know what happened there. The morals are great people, but homeschooling just turned him into this socially awkward person. And we're working on it here at the network. And thank you so much for contributing to Patreon.
We can't say it. We can't say it was homeschooling. It could have happened if he was in school too. I mean, we don't know the root cause yet, so it may not be the cause of it.
Christy Avery with the ex-husband shade, Alex Avery, unschooled. Another example of how it does sometimes go wrong. Jen writes, so right. 2 of my kids are loving homeschool. The younger one, not so much. We use actual books, whereas the public school has removed the textbooks. Yeah, school choice is where Evan says, we are firm on my nephew only doing the virtual learning, but we noticed it was very difficult for him. The teacher was split between in-class and remote. We decided it was best for him to be back in class, but it was our choice. Zach says, public schools have trained professionals that can deal with behavioral issues. As someone with a nephew diagnosed with a personality disorder, the interaction and access to basic mental health treatment drastically improved his life. Mm-hmm. We're at a point where schools have a monopoly, and we need to break that monopoly apart and start giving people choice and moving that direction. But we're giving one option right now, and it's virtual learning, and it's killing people. It's literally, people are dying because they're stuck at home. Their kids are stuck at home, and they're not getting access to the things that they were dependent on. So,
but you balance that too with how many kids are dying because of bullying now.
No, Rhinehold, stop it. What are you talking about, bullying? I'm going to bully you.
Kids still cyberbully, okay?
Yeah.
And they're still going to cyberbully. They're going to find each other in Discord channel, and they're going to cyberbully. You know, Escala Ja is, you know, massive bully sometimes.
Right. James Neese. Mm-hmm. It's like, I get what you're saying, Rhinehold, but like...
And Rhinehold's a bully, too.
You know, domestic violence has gone up 100%. Like the pandemic.
It was different when I was growing up.
I know. I was bullied too. I mean, I'm still cyberbullied. Look at the Apple reviews. But the reality is that, like, kids get bullied in homeschool too. All right, we gotta move on. We gotta take a quick break. Thank you so much for listening to the Chris Spangle Show here on the We Are Libertarians podcast network. And tune back in. We'll continue talking about minimum wage right after this. All right, we'll do a little in-stream conversation because I have to use the restroom because my old man prostate deems it so. So you entertain the people who are on the live stream.
Hey, live stream.
Hi, live stream.
Welcome to my stream. Today we're going to be playing a game called Valorant. And why did you... No, I'm not going to...
No. Do you really play that game, Rhinehold?
Oh, I'm good at it. I'm in.
I have an idea while I'm gone. Everybody in the comments, cyberbully Rhinehold.
Yeah, are you good at Valorant?
All I have to do is go search in the Mises Caucus.
Or are you good?
Search for my name.
Are you good like you're good in Paladins? Because, you know, it's a big difference, you know.
I'm better at that than I am Paladins, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. You are getting better. I watched your video that, yeah, you are getting a lot better at Paladins. It's scary.
Which
how
one
much.
Was that?
Huh?
Which one was that?
What was the last one you just posted?
The one about the he's alive.
Yeah,
Rhinehold lives or whatever. Yeah, that was
a
fun. I was playing a healer. So I'm sure this is so interesting to everybody who tuned in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what they want to
If you
hear.
want to hear more gaming talk, head on over to the Discord. We're there. We sometimes stream. I stream sometimes on Twitch, Rhinehold TV.
Yeah. Fine. I'll game stream again. Fine. Nah.
We were going to actually put some of the streams on the YouTube, but Chris hadn't told me I could do that yet. So,
you just do it. You just ask for the password.
I did. I gave you. I made you an admin on it.
I didn't see anything come through for me to be an admin.
Well, that's Google's
I'll have to go
fault.
check.
And don't do that. Just have producer Paul do it.
Producer Paul.
Yeah, that's why I make producer Paul.
I'll send all my stuff to him and see if he'll edit it for me.
Listen to this old man comment. John Ulrich, I'm on a break from gaming. I think it's giving me arthritis in my thumbs. I can't.
Sounds like a console player.
Yeah, that's a console peasant in the chat. Man, can you see us in HD? Like,
keyboard mouse, baby, is the only way to go.
Get you a mouse. Or like me, I got two mice here. I got 3 keyboards in front of me. We have 3 computers.
All right,
I got 3 screens.
It's okay. I actually got to put together back my server rack again, and then so I can put all the stuff back because I'm gonna rack. Because I'm redoing my gaming PC, and I'm gonna rack mount my gaming PC. I'm gonna I got the rack mount kit, so I'm gonna put it in the rack mount and just throw it in my server closet. And
all
just
right,
run
enough about your rack. All right, you guys ready?
Rack up this. All right.
Welcome back to the Chris Spangle Show. Hey, if you hate those ads and you don't want to hear advertising anymore, then please join Wall Plus. www.joinwallplus.com. That's WAL, like we are libertarians. Thank you so much for joining us. Here with me are Rhinehold and Harry Price, my co-hosts, my ride or dies, my best buds, my bros. And we are talking about Joe Biden's stimulus plan. And now we're going to talk about the minimum wage. We're going to discuss the effect of raising the federal minimum wage, forcing all businesses, allegedly, in the United States to pay $15 an hour. The current minimum wage is $7.25. That was raised in 2009. Joe Biden has already raised the minimum wage at the federal government to $15 an hour. And here's the thing about the federal government as an employer: if you get 40 hours a week, you make $7.25 an hour, and then they raise it to 15, they will still pay you at $15 an hour for 40 weeks. Because they can just print the money or steal it from more people. They can't do that. You can't do that if you run a small business. So we will take a look at this. So the raise would increase the current minimum rate for federal workers of $10.95 per hour. So the national minimum wage is $7.25. The federal minimum wage for workers is $10.95. That got a boost in 2014 when Obama used an executive order to increase it. Biden said no one working 40 hours a week should live below the poverty line. A sentiment I completely agree with. No qualifiers. How we get there is of a differing opinion. Biden said...
Which poverty line?
Well, that's a good point, right?
That's a whole rant I was going to go on, but we'll get there.
Nambia's poverty line or... no one... people tell me it's going to be hard to pass. Florida just passed it. As divided as that state is, they just passed it. The rest of the country is ready to move as well. Florida voted for a $15 minimum wage in November. They've passed a couple referendums, which is giving people hope that it's going to trend more blue in Florida, too, because they just passed the minimum wage. They gave the vote to felons. So the Biden administration would need at least 10 Republicans voting in the Senate to get its relief bill through Congress, unless it goes through the budget reconciliation process where a bare majority is enough. 51-49 or 51-50 with Kamala Harris, the Senate president and vice president, breaking the tie. That is likely what is going to happen. This is, in my view, they're set up to remove the filibuster, which I have not decided on where I fall on that yet. I haven't done enough research into it, but Well, they didn't work with us on the most important bill Joe Biden will ever pass, which is the COVID relief bill. This is a pandemic, and there's millions of people dead, and everybody's poor, and we need to give them money. And the Republicans did nothing, and so we had to do it through this process. And so we just, because they won't work with us, get rid of the filibuster. They'll use budget. Do you guys remember the slaughter rule and how Obamacare got passed? Because basically the House passes a shell bill, the Senate passes a bill, and then a committee of both chambers comes together and reconciles the bill, and that's what Joe Biden signs. Is kind of the so Evan. So that just happened. They got 51-50 vote with VP Harris. What just happened? I know that the shell bill got passed. I thought that was in the House. Was that in the Senate? Let me know, Evan. So the 2019 version of the bill was scored. I lost my place. I know. Conference committee is what you're talking about. Thank you, Evan. It gets changed in the conference committee. So some experts say that a minimum wage increase could be eligible to pass via that route because it's effectively a tax-raising measure. The 2019 version of the bill was scored by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office as having no budget effect. However, that version would likely be blocked by the Senate rules, which required items that use the reconciliation be fiscal in nature. Higher minimum wage has long been a debate amongst economists. Does it help or does it hurt? And it usually falls along your partisan lines. If you're in the Milton Friedman camp, you're anti-minimum wage. If you're in the Keynes camp, John Maynard Keynes, then you're in the Senate passed the $1.9 trillion COVID relief. Thank you, Evan. So, wait, they passed the actual whole bill? Did the House pass the bill too? So I thought that they were still working out the details with Joe Manchin. What are you talking about? So Mitch McConnell blocked a minimum wage increase that passed in the House in 2019 when the economy was doing well. Republicans say raising labor costs would hurt small companies already struggling with the pandemic. Virginia has delayed an increase scheduled this year on similar grounds. Every increase in the federal... So here's where we start to get into numbers. And before we do that, let's go to Evan McMahon, who's in the comments giving us some details. The Senate passed a budget resolution very early Friday morning, a key step for the Democratic-controlled Congress to pass Biden's relief proposal without votes. The 51-50 vote with Harris breaking the tie came after an all-night marathon vote-a-rama. So they have passed their first budget resolution. At 5:23 a.m. Nice, okay. No. So pre-scheduled future increases in the federal minimum wage have very often taken effect just before or during recessions. So some have been passed in 69-70, 74-75, 80-81, 90-91, 2007-2008. Every time there's a recession, this comes up. We need to get people more money. Let's figure this out. And 1 million more sub-minimum workers in 1991 and 1.3 million more in 1996, 97, 2007, and 09 lost their jobs. So every increase in the federal minimum wage in the past 40 years resulted in an average of 1 million more people being pushed into jobs paying below the federal minimum wage. Millions of tiny businesses are inescapably exempt from the law, as are many low-wage occupations. So in 91, 97, and 2007 to 9, more than 1 million people were pushed into lower-paying jobs than they had before because of the minimum wage increase. The federal minimum wage was increased by 26.9% in 91, and the number... Oh, who was president in 1990-91? Rhinehold? Who was that?
It was George Herbert Walker Bush.
Weird.
Who famously said no new taxes,
right.
if I remember right.
The And the number of workers employed below that minimum wage, below that minimum, increased by 73%. It was increased by 21% in 97, and the number working below the minimum increased 76%. When it was raised by 27% in 2007, below that minimum, the employment in below minimum wage jobs increased 102%. Okay, so every time you pass a minimum wage increase, you get people getting paid less. So economists have debated whether or not a higher minimum wage increases the number who are unemployed. So oftentimes you'll hear people say it just costs people jobs, right? If you pass the minimum wage, then people lose work. They go on unemployment. McDonald's can't hire people. They can't pay people. But that really asks the wrong question. And a lot of this comes from the Cato Institute. You can find all of our show notes outlined at wearelibertarians.com in the show notes of this episode on your podcast app as well. If 1 million people are compelled to switch from a relatively solid job with a large national corporation to a precarious job with a tiny local company, or switch to delivering newspapers, mowing lawns, or cleaning houses for a living, they're not unemployed. They're underemployed. They are just reemployed at jobs that commonly have less security, no health care or retirement benefits, and no opportunities for advancement. Raising the federal minimum never causes other wages to rise in sync, as proponents allege. In fact, the trend to year-to-year increases in average wage growth slowed for at least a year every time the federal minimum wage was increased. So, again, with the Cato Institute, many more American workers earn a wage below the federal minimum than the number earning that minimum, even though the latter gets all the political attention. There were nearly 3 times as many people earning below minimum wage in 2009 as the number being paid that wage. So there's millions and millions and millions of more people working jobs that will never see the benefit realized from the federal minimum wage increase. Now, why is that? Employers subject to the Fair Labor Standards Act must pay the federal minimum wage, but that law specifically excluded a variety of specific occupations from the minimum wage, such as newspaper delivery workers, seasonal farm workers, workers in commercial fisheries and canneries, private investigators, and telephone switchboard operators, as the Economic Policy Institute says. Millions of small businesses with annual revenue below $500,000, or is that 5 million? It's 5 million, are exempt from federal minimum wage unless they engage in interstate commerce. In June 2020, there were 13.5 million U.S. businesses with sales of less than $500,000, accounting for 75.5% of all U.S. businesses, according to NIACS. So 75% of the small businesses in this country will be totally exempt from the raising of the minimum wage. Around 70 to 75% of people are employed by small businesses, not large corporations, especially people who are going to be affected by this particular increase. And 75% of of that is not going to be affected by the federal minimum wage hike. The federal minimum wage may also be avoided by paying cash in the informal gig economy, or by subcontracting unskilled tasks such as janitorial services to exempt micro-business contractors. Millions of tiny businesses and contractors are far too numerous and unprofitable to be tracked and policed by federal agents, partly because they rarely file complaints against voluntary agreements between consenting adults. So, Harry, both of you, we've talked a lot about the gig economy. I have several income streams. This is considered part of my gigs. It's all 1099. I have to pay the taxes, myself. I don't get benefits. If I lose my full-time job, I don't have health insurance with We Are Libertarians, or Patreon, where the majority of that money comes. I just got my 1099 from Patreon the other day. I've got to pay taxes on all that stuff because it's not been taken out. And I'm not good with money like probably most other low-income workers, so I wasn't paying quarterly taxes on any of that stuff. So now I've got a huge tax burden that's due unless I miraculously find many, many, many exemptions and expenses. So, you're pushing people into lower-paying jobs without benefits and into the gig economy. Well, lo and behold, part of the Joe Biden stimulus package, Biden is also backing, this comes from the Daily Signal, Biden also backs the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, or PRO Act, which organized labor also supports, prohibiting contract or freelance work as well as part-time work. Organized labor strongly backs the legislation as a means of increasing union membership. A similar law in California left many freelancers unemployed. You remember the whole Uber Lyft situation in California? It's difficult to pinpoint how many jobs would be lost if this law were passed at the federal law level. The Freelancers Union estimates that 1 in 3 workers in the United States participates in independent work. Furthermore, about 10% of workers perform independent work, such as contracting, freelancing, and consulting as their primary jobs. Fewer than 1 in 10 independent contractors would prefer traditional work arrangement. It would not just kill jobs, it would force people into a certain type of job. He backed this legislation as a candidate as well. I am somebody that looks at their future and says, I'm going to be a consultant teaching people how to do podcasting. I want to work for myself. I want to start my own business and contract with other people. Why shouldn't I have that right? Why should I have to form a business and an LLC and pay all kinds of extra fees and taxes? Oh, I know, because 65 business licenses just got revoked in Fresno, California because they didn't follow the pandemic rules. So, this sounds like a bunch of BS, Harry. You got to unmute yourself, bro.
Yeah, sorry. Gunther's been running around the hallway. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, you should form an LLC, one, just to protect your own personal finances as you do separate things and put them all into like little shells anyways. But yeah, it's the way to revoke and it is a way to control. The little California freelance bill, which has been amended several different times and had to adjust it in businesses, have scrambled. And some of my favorite freelance writers most of them have lost their jobs or were forced to leave California. Even some of the streamers that I like to watch for like a Hulu or sex workers, they had to get different agreements with the places they stream with. And then they had to go ahead and change all that to even just continue their craft. It destroyed but also like helped out other people who were around but didn't actually live in the state of California, and will do the exact same thing to the gig economy, especially when dealing with the way everything works on a global stage. Because if I can't hire a worker it's the same thing like NAFTA and GATT did. It's like if I need to hire customer service people at $10 an hour to sit in a booth to take phone calls, cool. There's English speakers in Guadalajara and other places of the world with a voice over IP server up in some sort of cloud server that they can have a local phone number and not be nowhere near you, and it sounded crystal clear.
Yeah. Rhinehold, anything to add
about that silly little bill? I come from industry that a lot of people choose to become their own. So I'm a consultant, but I work for a company who does all the financials and project management for me. I don't have to do all that stuff. That's fine. That's my choice. But there are a lot of people who want to do that and start their own and do their own thing, and keep all the money themselves and not have, that's what they want to do. So these bills go into play and put these laws in place. And now you're telling people they can't work the way they want to work, for no reason. It doesn't make any sense on what the purpose is, other than to lock you into, you're seen as being a black market guy or out of the system or whatever. But that's what a lot of people like about it. So I don't understand. I mean, I can see why they're trying to do it, because they want control, but that's all government does that, right? So,
Evan, you'll have to explain this. The Obama policy restricting independent contractors impacts that. California banned all freelance and independent contractors. 95% 5% of my working career has been as an independent contractor freelancer. Having an LLC doesn't change your status with the other party. You could still be considered an independent contractor. So at what point am I a business versus or a corporation versus an independent contractor or freelancer? Or are you saying that it is really like, it's like this book, 3 Felonies a Day, that our friend Hody Johns turned us on to, where you commit 3 felonies a day living in this country, whether you know it or not, because there's so many laws and you can be charged with anything. And if somebody wants to find a reason to tell you that you're an independent contractor and you can no longer do that job, they'll do it. Love some clarification on that, Evan. Go ahead.
Yeah,
there.
and it's also how you pay someone. Do you invoice them? How you control it? It's really like very particular, like versus a contractor versus a like a company that you do business with. There's really intricate rules, and it actually can change and vary between different states and other things that you do for the state. Like I'm having to with the company I work for now, like they're trying to offboard people, and I'm trying to tell them like, hey, you can't do some of this stuff depending on the state that they're living in currently, especially since you allow them to live remotely. You know, some of the things you're doing, you can't offboard them that way. It's like you have to give them that. You have to give them that because they now currently reside in that state, and you allowed them to do that.
Yeah, so just to recap, you get 1 million more people pushed into below minimum wage jobs. Many of those are, Evan said it's in the contract that's drafted. Are you a vendor completely separate from the control of the other business? And you get people pushed into a new form of employment that is being banned and outlawed, especially in blue states and by Democrats increasingly because of wanting to help unions. And
every time we find a way around what the government's trying to do to us,
and this is and it always makes this is the thing, and you nailed it. Anytime a central planner says, I want to effectuate this outcome with this law, the exact opposite happens, and they end up making it worse. So if you are drafting a law that says, I want people to get paid more and have a better quality job, all you're doing is pushing people into lower income jobs with less benefits and less quality. With this law, it's if you interfere in the what's called the price system. So libertarians believe in the price system. Okay, the inherent value of a good is not the amount of labor that is put into it or just the material costs. Okay, it is the price that people will pay for it. Your labor is a good that you sell to other people, and they pay a price. You set the price voluntarily with your employer. And when somebody comes in and interferes with the ability to set a price and they artificially inflate it, you then have all of these actions taking place that cause trade-offs that aren't good for the person had everyone just left everything alone, because the price system would regulate behavior. And it's a better way of regulating than people intervening in the price market, because it's all about signals, okay? The price that you set or the price that you pay for something sends a signal to people. If you're buying less of something and people have less demand for something, then the signal is sent to everyone: make less of this, reinvest in other things, and go other places that will make you more money, that will make you more profit, that will make you more income. I'm triggering the hell out of Ryan Lindsay right now, but this is basic libertarian theory, right? And so, hold on. And so the price theory basically says it's creative destruction, right? So sometimes, like everybody used to use a pencil. Well, if the government comes in and says, no, you must produce pencils at the same rate as 1950 in the digital era, you may save people in the pencil industry, but you've now robbed them the opportunity to find good paying jobs in growth markets as opposed to staying in the dying pencil industry, because eventually some other politician's going to come in and take that out of the market. And so people shift to other jobs. And so you're interfering with a basic price signal. And a lot of these low-paying jobs are low-paying because it incentivizes people to find better-paying jobs and raise their standard of living, because the foundation of economics is scarcity. People are afraid that they won't have enough, so they will always do things to try and have more. And so they will always seek out a better way to feed their family, to find their path to liberty. And when other people get in the way, like code violations and we're going to increase the amount you have to pay your workers, so therefore you have less investment, less growth, less workers, you lay people off. You're interfering with all of that, and you're making the problem worse at the end of the day. Harry?
It's the thing with it, right? It's that idea that they want to interact and manipulate and get into all those different things, because it's just going to change the way that people join different businesses. Like Evan was talking about the contract thing. You may just see like different people who just get invoiced for jobs, especially then if they're remote and they don't have to go to the office. Cool. You no longer work here. You no longer get benefits here. I just invoice you for work, especially that you're learning the code. Cool. This is your project. I want this thing done. I'm just going to buy some lines of code from you and I'm going to invoice you. You're not, and if you don't give, and I'm going to contract for everyone else from all these different people. It is going, the unintended consequences of that type of law going to different fields it's going to be drastic, and it scares the bejesus out of someone like me in my industry, because technically, like, someone could invoice me for like, hey, set up these switches and I'll just invoice you instead of getting paid or getting any type of benefits.
Because you work in an industry that is an online business dealing in physical products, making it easier for those physical products to be bought and sold by people who are really just individuals looking to start, looking to start their own business on the back of a company like yours that allows them greater access to physical products because of digital technology.
Correct. And the way that we do, the way our company is set up, it's like, well, are they considered employees? We don't technically pay them. They give us things and we print out stuff, or we do things for them. Like, are they considered employees at that point? You know? That's also the scary simple fact. Like
right.
that.
Does the person who rents their house on Airbnb, are they an employee?
Right. Are they employee of Airbnb? Or even the people that, like, let's say they've got Airbnb properties in different, like, let's say you've got an Airbnb property in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and you've got someone else there to clean it there. Like, who's the employee now?
A company like yours gives somebody all the jobs that I have, from my day job to my side gigs, didn't exist 20 years ago, barely 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Really, in some ways, not even 10 years ago, because you couldn't do video streaming in the way you can do now. It has afforded me a job and a good amount of money to spend most of that money and create economic growth in my community. Mm-hmm. Your company allows me to create a new business, to create new opportunity, and I'm going to be at the point in the next year or two where I can start hiring people. Because I'm reaching my bandwidth, so now I'm looking for an independent contractor at some point in the next few months, because now our Patreon allows me and affords me the opportunity to pay somebody to do some of the editing or some of the social media posts or the copy editing or the posting, helping deal with the many shows on the network, right? And so a company like yours allows me the income to do that. And all of the stuff that we've talked about today in Joe Biden's plan and some of these rules means I'm not going to be able to do my business. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing? Just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Let the free market rule.
And that's the one thing we kept talking about, like the thing that's going to really wreck the economy was the aspect of, like, they're just going to get in the way to allow people to get back on their feet and do what they want to do and get things done.
Most people are really fucking indignant when they're treated poorly, too. This isn't Upton Sinclair in 1902. Most people in the internet age, because of the end of scarcity, can see what everybody else has and how other people are treated, unlike 150 years ago. And they go, I'm not going to stand for this. You know, how many millennial friends and employees do you two have in me where one thing happens and you're like, I am not to be treated this way. And you're like, bro, you're not feeding pigs in 95-degree heat. Just deal with like, people have a high degree of mobility. And when you give people a high degree of opportunity economically through the free market, it means that better work conditions flourish because people are attracted to that, and poorer working conditions go away because nobody wants to work there. So the hardest thing right now in running a business is hiring people and retaining those people. Go ahead, Harry.
We were building the new facility, right? And they built this amazing, like, state-of-the-art printing area, and then they kind of like dropped the ball on this other thing. And it's like, hey, you guys should probably air conditioning that. And it's like, well, why? These machines don't need to be air conditioned. And I go, like, the workers do. Yeah. You want to know why you have poor quality in the other plant? Because that plant's not air conditioned.
Right.
You know, you're going to get somebody who really doesn't care because they're sweating their face off during the summertime, working in this unair conditioned area to make a hat like this. No one's going to do that. And then if they are, they're going to sit there and they're going to be a reason why they're willing to take that. And you're not going to want this person.
So I was just listening to a podcast between two people who build commercial construction office spaces, and they were talking about how the biggest problem that is recruiting and retention in jobs, because there's so much mobility, there's so much opportunity for jobs now because of the internet age. And so that has impacted the way that offices are built, because now they need amenities. They need things restructured to keep people there, especially when now they have the option of working at home. So you get the tennis court in the back end of the building. You get air conditioning. You get better conditions because of the higher degree of employment freedom.
My company, they closed our downtown office, which took away our gym access. So they just gave us LA Fitness for free for health and
right.
Yeah. So
I have one friend that their company gave them a $4,000 bonus for everybody to spend on health equipment. So they got like a rower. This is a major company that everybody would know the name of, and they did it for all of their employees because if that means they're going to be on that rower every day, which means that their health insurance costs are going to go down. Rhinehold smiled because he's like, I wouldn't be on the rower every day.
No, it's a great place to hang your clothes.
I just bought an exercise bike that has like a little desk on it that folds up. So, because I'm not able to get to the gym as often as I need to, and I need physical exercise because I'm stuck in my house all the time now. Because I'm not going to, I used to go to work every day, and at noon I'd go over to the gym. I'd come back and finish my day. So I'm adjusting, and that's the thing. People are fluid and adjusting, and always trying to seek out their better life. And the job of libertarians is to remove those barriers for people, and the people that have insurmountable barriers work to find ways to create opportunities to help those people get over those barriers. And that is done through private organizations. That's what the whole point of my Now Hear This podcast is about, is talking to local charities. I'm putting some of that in the Chris Spangle feed because I want you to hear how private charities can effectively help people and also get you to donate to them because they need more money. They have a scarcity issue too. And so, Apple has no scarcity because everybody wants an iPhone, but the Children's Bureau that's desperately in need of your donations needs to have no scarcity issues. So Darla says, feel like you guys could be harder on the Biden administration. Darla, this entire episode is explaining why the philosophy and policies of the Biden administration are wrong. And maybe you'd like us to call them evil and Kamala Harris is a baby killer. I'm not going to fucking do that. There's plenty of other podcasts that will feed you that trash, but we're here to talk about policy. We're here to explain why all these are bad ideas or good ideas or what needs to happen and give you solutions. I'm not going to sit here and rant about politicians and tell you why AOC is evil and Bernie Sanders is this. And like, if you want your anti-leftist, candy for breakfast, you can find it somewhere else. But that's not the type of show we're going to be doing anymore. It's cheap. It's easy. It's lowbrow. You can find it elsewhere.
And speaking of policy,
yeah.
I do kind of want to go off a bit more on a rant on some of the negative effects of the unemployment rate, because a lot of people don't think about these things. Like they look at the person who's like at $12 an hour is now getting $15 an hour, and there's $3 difference there. But then the business has to kind of find where to get that $3 from, so they might raise the price of their product or service to compensate for it, and now that costs a little bit more. So people come out in a negative end, or even maybe break even. But what happens to the guy who's making $15 an hour now? Now you've just given somebody a $12, from the minimum wage from $7 and now $15. Now this guy making $15 an hour who was making twice minimum wage is saying, I'm making minimum wage now. I can go anywhere and get this money. I don't have to work as hard as I've been working. I want more money for what I'm doing. Some unions have it in their contracts that their pay structure is tied to whatever the minimum wage is. So if the minimum wage goes up, everybody gets a raise. So look at the labor costs have just expanded huge for everybody, not just the people who are below the minimum wage. And that really turns up the cost of goods and services at that point, right? So then the people who are now making minimum wage go buy some milk and they find out it's 30 cents, 40 cents more. And they go to try to buy food and they find out the food's gone up, or the quantity has gone down, like the candy bars. We used to get a nice candy bar for $0.25, and now for $1 you get like a half a size of what you used to get, because they keep shrinking it down. So the real problem I find with all of this, other than that, is something that I've always harped on, is that the cost of living is different everywhere. Everybody knows this. I don't understand why politicians have a problem with that. The cost of living where I live is different than what the cost of living is in the city, in Indy, which is a lot different than what it is in Chicago, which is a lot different than what it is in LA, which is a lot different than it is in Mobile, Alabama. Right?
Yeah, that's why some people are proposing a sliding scale of, if you live in this state, in this area, then your minimum wage will be this. And if you're in New York, your minimum wage will be 20. Instead of just saying the price system will take care of it.
Yeah, well, if you're going to do a minimum wage, it has to be tied to the local cost of living there, or when you talked earlier about what the living wage is. That's why I said living wage is different all over the place, right? So even if you're going to have a federal minimum wage, which I think is a horrible idea for that reason, because all you're doing is targeting the median again, as I was saying before. You're targeting a median group to affect them, but then these people who would be working for less than that and still be making a living wage are now not allowed to, and people who are in New York City are already making more than $15 an hour, so they don't care, right? So you're not really helping anybody at that point. So if you're going to do a federal minimum wage, which I still disagree with, it has to be tied to whatever the local cost of living is. So they have to do some sort of formulation and tie it to that and have it change every so many years based off of the recalculations of that to even make it feasible to work.
Yeah, Evan says the states already have that authority. The federal minimum wage is just the floor. And there are some states that already have the $15 minimum wage, for instance. It's just the...
Yeah. Even the state is wrong, right? Because like I was saying, the cost of living here is much different than it is in Indy or Carmel. I think the cost of living in Carmel is a little bit different than out here in the boonies. So...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's continue on with these great notes. Job losses happen because higher labor costs gradually force more and more marginally unprofitable branches or businesses to close that would have otherwise been open had they not had this artificial insertion into the labor force. And higher labor costs encourage investment in labor-saving machinery such as self-checkout. So when increased federal minimum wage shrinks job offers among such large interstate companies, that does not leave the resulting displaced workers no choice. It leaves them no choice but to replace those workers. They can queue up with large number of other unskilled people. Excuse me. All right, I'm reading this wrong. Sorry. Large interstate companies, that does not leave the resulting displaced workers no choice but to remain jobless. They can instead queue up with the large number of other unskilled people who always compete for the many below the minimum wage jobs that are either legally exempt from the federal minimum wage or effectively off the books. So it pushes people into black market employment. The trouble is, such increased competition for exempt jobs after the minimum wage goes up drives wages down for those who are already working below the previous lower minimum wage. It makes the poorest poorer because they have the least skills. And so the people who have the least value in terms of their labor exchange then get unemployed, which increases the amount of dependency on unemployment and federal welfare programs. Federal law does not exempt low-wage workers in big multi-state chains like Hilton or McDonald's. Their workers could not possibly have kept working at a wage below the increased minimum wage. And the evidence of rising below minimum wage jobs shows that many did not keep their previous FLSA-covered jobs. So what that means is that when the McDonald's employees are replaced with a kiosk, that could have been a job, but it isn't a job because they can't decrease their wages to allow that person to stay employed. They still have the same demand. They just now have a smaller supply for employees. They still need to meet the needs of their customers, so they develop new technologies that don't involve payroll. So right. It's a huge shoot in the foot.
Yeah, and if someone was going to say like, well, the technology is coming anyways. Yes, it is coming. The automatic kiosk is coming, but if the wages didn't go up and the kiosk came anyways, then someone just reallocate that position. Yes, cool. The kiosk is there. That person will go out and make sure the tables stay cleaner, or they will go out and or they can make food faster. The position just gets moved. But with the wages moved up, the position just gets eliminated.
So every time the federal minimum wage is increased, jobs that is covered by the increase lose employees, and then there are greater job losses in those areas, and then places where it's not covered see greater demand for competition for employment, and the result is just less people working. So no two economies are identical or immediately comparable. Regional, state, and municipal economies vary in ways that lead to different outcomes when wage floors change. In all reality, the result of any given minimum wage hike likely lies somewhere in a mushy middle. Some workers see a bump in pay. Some workers see no change in income because they're making at or just above the new minimum wage. Some workers are let go, and some workers are never hired. And so that means that in different areas, it could be any number of percentages for those variables. So you will often see private companies say, we're going to voluntarily raise that wage. Sometimes this is a shell game for good PR. Target promised to voluntarily bump the pay nationwide for their employees in 2017, except for many of the intended beneficiaries, the results weren't positive. An employee said, I got that dollar raise, but I'm getting $200 less in my paycheck. Heather said, whose hours have been cut from 40 to 20, explained CNN. 22 other Target employees were interviewed by the network of CNN, and they all of whom seen their hours reduced even as their hourly rate increased. Minimum wage increases don't have to lead to layoffs to hurt people who are supposed to realize the benefit. Companies can reduce hours to keep take-home pay roughly the same or slash hours even further. 2019 report from the CBO says that the new federal minimum wage would cost 1.3 million jobs, and it would boost paychecks for 17 million workers who would otherwise earn less than $15 per hour. About 10 million workers So here's the trade-off, right? You can look at it as good or bad, make a moral judgment, or we can look at this as trade-offs. You can increase the federal minimum wage, and you'll see 17 million workers make $15 an hour, but you're going to have 1.3 million jobs lost, and you're going to see hours cut, and you'll see a lot of people out of work. So if Congress hyped the minimum wage to 12 by 2025, about 5 million workers would benefit from bigger paychecks, and 300,000 jobs would be lost. So when everybody goes, well, why not just $100 an hour for the living wage? There's real math involved here. So you go $12 an hour, you lose 300,000 jobs. You go $15 an hour, you lose 1.3 million. That's a big jump. Roughly a million, if I'm doing my math right here. An increase in $10 an hour would benefit only about 1.5 million workers and would have almost no effect on employment levels. Someone who has a hard time finding a job that pays $8 an hour will be completely out of luck if employers are required to hire only workers who are worth $15 an hour. So, I'm going to... So yeah, go ahead, weigh in, Harry. I heard you.
I was going to say because that is going to affect things, especially in this COVID world. Some businesses probably have learned, you know what, this drive-through only thing is working for us. This not allowing people into the store with their dirty hands and their dirty kids. No, keep them outside. Drive-through only. No, thank you. Take your crap and go home.
Yeah.
What? You have to hire? Yeah. Now the cleaning crew is the people who make the food. You just got to clean the kitchen. Hey, we can go for a smaller footprint.
Yeah.
What? It's going to affect things in different ways. Or with what people have learned for the Mr. Beast thing is just do we really need our own kitchen? Can we share a kitchen with other space? So you just need one cleaning crew for 5 different businesses. It's going to make things more efficient in certain areas, but it's going to do so artificially because of the laws affecting that way. It's not going to happen naturally, which, it is going to shatter and wreck some jobs. And it's going to be the people who are most hurt, like teenagers. No one's probably going to want to hire a teenager at $15 an hour or that, because the main reason that people love Chick-fil-A and Culver's is the army of teenagers that they hire that just take care of you and take care of the place.
Yeah. Evan says, and I've seen this at Chick-fil-A, some large franchise fast food chains have already started planning new drive-through only stores, like rallies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm yeah.
Which rallies by me closed, and I miss the Big Buford. I'm a big Buford fan.
Just like their fries. The fries are some of the best fries. I want their fries, but like a Five Guys burger, but rally fries.
Rally's over by you closed.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a quick lube now, which I don't need to be lubed quick. I want my Buford.
You have to drive another 5 blocks to get that now.
Oof.
So this goes to abolishing price and wage controls, and this is what you see with this. Is a price control on labor. Minimum wage, you're controlling the price on labor. And Cato did an article on this. Again, it's in the show notes, where they talked about this in relation to the pandemic. So abolish price and wage controls. Economists tend to oppose price controls at the best of times, but there has been a new willingness during the pandemic to set some of these. So COVID-19 has proven a demand and supply shock in product markets, and these shocks have reverberated into labor markets. Social distancing changed consumer taste, worker behavior, and workers being more reluctant to do certain jobs have altered the supply and demand for workers across localized markets. I've seen that to be true, but I also feel like a year on, everybody's sort of ready to go back to normal. April... grocery workers were like, all right, I feel unsafe. February 2021, grocery store workers were like, I need my money. I'll deal with the plexiglass. It's fine. Let me get back to work. We might therefore expect wages to also adjust to these new conditions, as we have seen in certain sectors. Amazon introduced hazard pay. The free market will adjust. So Amazon introduced hazard pay temporarily for its frontline workers to compensate for their greater infection risks, and retailers saw surging demand, increased wages to attract more workers. Elsewhere, the big decline in economic activity from lockdowns and ongoing social distancing actually led to nominal wages for at least 4 million private sector workers in the early months of the pandemic, and many employers canceled planned wage increases as well. So as policymakers prevent price adjusting upward through anti-price gouging legislation, they also prevented some workers' wages adjusting downward through minimum wage laws. 29 states have higher minimums than $7.25. Some jurisdictions affected by COVID-19 have very high local wage floors, like New York City with $15 an hour. Half of the states raised their rates in the past 3 years, while a number of local governments with their own higher wage minimums jumped from 5 to 52 today. In normal times, one would expect minimum wages, if set above market levels, to reduce the demand for lower productivity employees, eliminating employment opportunities. Some studies have found the aggregate impact on employee levels of modestly set minimum wages can be small and consigned to particular demographic groups. So there are good reasons to think that a lot of these past increases in minimum wage levels might result in more damaging impacts on job prospects for low-paid workers during the pandemic. A Bureau of Labor Statistics analysis at the time of the lockdowns last year found that occupations with lower wages are more common in the shutdown sectors than anywhere else in the economy, which we all knew. Lots of businesses and industries hit especially hard by depressed demand, and social distancing practices after the lockdowns are those with large number of minimum wage workers. Industries with high concentrations of lower wage jobs include restaurants and bars, 12.3 million workers, other retail, 6.5 million, travel and transportation, 3.5 million, entertainment, 2.6 million, and personal services, 2.1 million. The pandemic is likely to have reduced underlying market wages in many sectors with high number of minimum wage workers, meaning minimum wage laws are likely to have more damaging effects in creating unemployment in the sectors the most hardest hit by the lockdowns. The pandemic itself is likely to have exacerbated what economists have dubbed the more dynamic impacts on employment. During expansions, the focus for lots of businesses is on meeting the rising demand rather than cost-cutting through laying off workers. That means older, low-skilled workers, labor-intensive businesses enjoy a better general environment for their survival despite the pressures of recent large minimum wage increases. But you combine that with the large shock of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's going to generate an unusually pronounced cycle of business ruin and creation. Many firms with old production technologies will likely disappear and be replaced by new technology-intensive firms employing fewer low-skilled workers. That will make the impact of the past minimum wage hikes, which increase the cost of employing low-skilled labor, more pronounced. Empirical evidence shows that minimum wage rises can be particularly harmful to the job prospects during downturns. In 2009, after Congress raised the federal minimum wage, economists Jeffrey Clemens and Michael Wither estimated that states experiencing the largest rise in the wage floor of the result of the federal policy change lost several 100,000 more low-wage jobs than they otherwise would have. In New York State alone, about 1 million people worked in retail fast food as cashiers, waitstaff, cooks, and bartenders. Many employers will no longer be able to afford the state's $11.80 minimum wage or New York City's $15 minimum for people working in restaurants. People who work in restaurants cannot make $15 an hour because businesses cannot survive. The reason that you have tips is that the reality of a restaurant is that because it is so low margin, they have to reduce the amount of fixed cost inside of a restaurant. You'll hear this in a conversation with a guy who manages restaurants. He talks about how you have to live off of tips because if the restaurant all of a sudden has to pay all these massive payroll costs, not only will the people making tips make less because they're typically making $22 an hour, then the restaurants can't survive because they can no longer pay for food costs. They cannot pay for health insurance. They cannot pay for all of the things that the politicians who want to force them to pay could possibly afford. So if you pass a $15 minimum wage, especially in the middle of the pandemic, you are going to see more. When the Congressional Budget Office says 1.3 million jobs will be lost, you always triple to quintuple the amount of cost or loss that you will see from the Congressional Budget Office. It's just a ironclad rule of politics that they underestimate things by a massive amount.
And it's also going to affect, like, through all this because of the COVID. You look at the essence, the bedrock of the minimum wage law, and which originally designed. Well, okay, I don't want to say designed to do, but one of the effects of the original minimum wage law was to stop black employment. Let's see.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of it was because a lot of black people were getting paid for different jobs. So, like, how can you get them to stop? Well, you've raised the minimum wage up. So, what is, you can get somebody like, well, do I hire these black guys for this little bit amount because they can easily undershoot these white guys, or have, since minimum wage, but like, well, now they're the same way as the white kids, so I'm going to go with the white people. Just because of nepotism or anything else in the area. So, yeah, Thomas Sowell wrote about it in, what was it? Oh, crap, he writes such long titles for books. I think it was in Black Rednecks and White Liberals. They were talking about that, on how that minimum wage laws would just reaped through and just destroyed black unemployment. Well, black employment and increased black unemployment. So if you look at the minimum wage graph, you can also have it charts with black unemployment. Every time it raises up, black unemployment goes up.
Rhinehold, anything to add before we end?
No, I think I got it out of my system there earlier. So
okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you listening to the Chris Spangle Show. Make sure you go support us at Join Wall Plus. If you found this interesting, if you learned something, please share it with a friend and say, hey, they're spitting fire here. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again next week.